At 6:42 a.m., my wife texted me, "You're not coming on the cruise. Emily wants her real dad." By noon, I'd sold the house. No yelling, no threats, just paperwork and silence. If you've ever been quietly erased from someone's life after giving them everything, subscribe now. Like this video, drop a comment, and settle in, because this story isn't about rage. It's about what happens when patience finally runs out. At 6:42 a.m., my phone buzzed on the kitchen table. Not rang, buzzed. That quiet, impatient vibration that feels like someone tapping you on the shoulder without bothering to look you in the eye. I was halfway across the kitchen, still barefoot, still foggy, reaching for the coffee pot. The radio was already on. AM, low volume, mumbling something about river levels near Cedar Rapids. Outside, the maple by the driveway shook in the wind, dry leaves skittering across the concrete like they were trying to escape. I glanced at the phone. "Linda, plans changed. You're not coming on the cruise. Emily wants her real dad." No emojis, no apology, just a period at the end, like she was closing a file. I stopped moving. The coffee pot hissed behind me, the smell turning sharp as it burned the last inch I hadn't poured yet. I didn't notice at first. I just stood there staring at the screen, half expecting it to blink, to correct itself, to say, "Sorry, wrong thread." It didn't. I read it again. Same words, same punctuation, same calm cruelty. It felt less like a fight and more like a cancellation. I set the phone face down on the table. It buzzed again immediately, angry this time, vibrating against the wood like it wanted back into my hand. I didn't pick it up. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table instead, the one that faced the window. "Your spot," Linda used to call it. I sat. The coffee kept burning. The radio droned on. Outside, the wind rattled the branches like it was in a hurry to get somewhere else. 14 years earlier, I'd moved into this house on East Locust Street with a couch, a toolbox, and a promise I actually meant. Emily was 12 back then, all elbows and knees, braces coming in, always watching, like she was waiting for the floor to drop out from under her. Her real dad, Rick Donnelly, had been gone more than he'd ever been around. Linda told me that the first night we sat on the back steps, beers sweating in our hands. "It's just us," she said. "We're a family now." She said it again when Emily needed braces. She said it when tuition bills showed up. She said it when I set up the auto debit for the Mississippi River anniversary cruise she'd been hinting at for months. We deserve this. We. But the text didn't say we. It said, "My real family." The phone buzzed again. I stood up and walked to the sink, poured the coffee out without tasting it. The mug clinked hard against the porcelain, like it was mad at me for wasting it. I rinsed it slowly, watching the steam curl up and disappear. When I picked the phone up again, it wasn't a text, it was a voicemail. Linda's voice, tight, fast, already annoyed. "Mark, don't make this into a thing. Emily asked for this. You understand, right? Call me when you've calmed down." Calm down. I leaned my hip against the counter and closed my eyes. I saw Emily at 12, sitting at this same table with her math homework spread out, crying because Rick hadn't shown up again. I remembered pulling out the chair next to her, not the head chair, and saying, "Okay, kiddo, let's do this together." I played the voicemail again. The second time, it sounded practiced, like she'd rehearsed it before hitting send. I didn't call back. By 9:30, I was supposed to be on the road to Dubuque for a dealership visit. I put on my jacket, grabbed my keys, and stopped in the hallway where the family photos hung. There was one from the year we refinanced, Linda and Emily on the couch, me standing just off to the side, hand on the back cushion, like I wasn't sure I belonged in the frame. I'd never noticed that before. At the dealership, I shook hands, talked numbers, nodded at the right times, missed a question and had to ask them to repeat it. My phone buzzed in my pocket, again and again. On the drive back, I pulled into a Casey's and sat in the truck with the engine idling.
I let the phone ring until it stopped. The silence afterwards felt heavy, like a door closing somewhere I couldn't reach. I thought about calling my buddy Tom from the VFW, thought about calling my sister in Moline, thought about calling Rick Donnelly and asking him what the hell he thought he was doing, stepping back into my life like a guest who'd finally noticed the bill. Instead, I drove home. The house was too quiet. Linda had left early for the airport. The bed was made tight and flat, hotel style. I sat at the table again, in that head chair, staring at the empty place settings. I imagined them on the cruise deck, wind in their hair, Rick leaning on the railing like he'd earned the view. My phone buzzed once more. Emily, please respect our space. I stared until the letters blurred. I didn't throw the phone, didn't swear. I just turned it face down and pushed it a few inches away, like you do with something hot you don't want to touch anymore. That was the moment it stopped being about the cruise. That was the moment I understood this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a line, and they'd been inching towards it for years while I paid the bills and smiled for photos. I sat there listening to the radio talk about river departures and returns, letting the hurt settle into something heavier, something steadier, something quiet. That night, I didn't sleep, and by morning, I wasn't asking why anymore. I was asking, what's mine?
I didn't sleep much that night. Not the tossing and turning kind. The kind where your eyes are closed, but your mind keeps pacing the same hallway, checking the same locked doors. Every time I drifted off, that phrase came back. My real family. It sat there like grit under a contact lens, small, sharp, impossible to ignore. At 5:30, I gave up. I shaved, dressed, made coffee again. This time, I drank it standing up. The house felt different in the early light. Not empty, waiting, like it wanted instructions. 3 missed calls from Linda, 2 voicemails. I didn't listen. On the drive to work, the AM radio faded in and out between farm reports and interest rate talk. The word rates stuck with me, the kind of thing you don't argue with, only prepare for. By 10, my hands started to shake. I told my assistant I needed air and drove straight to Davenport Community Credit Union. Same parking lot, same squeaky door. I'd been banking there since before Linda, before Emily. Before all of this. Susan at the counter smiled like she always did. "Morning, Mark. What can I help you with?" "I need to look at my accounts." She pulled everything up without fuss. Checking, savings, auto debits, mortgage, utilities, insurance. And there it was, the cruise payment, scheduled, all in my name. Susan glanced at me. "Everything okay?" I nodded, just making sure. Back in the truck, I sat with the printouts on my lap. They smelled like toner and coffee. For the first time since the text, the numbers didn't feel like an accusation. They felt like information. That night, I didn't go home right away. I pulled into the VFW on West 3rd Street. Low lights, fried onions, old stories hanging in the air. Walt Prendergast slid onto the stool next to me without asking. Navy cap worn soft as felt. "You look like hell," he said. "Feel worse." I told him just enough. The text, the cruise. He nodded once. "People don't change," he said. "They just get honest when they think they've won." I stared into my beer. "I don't want to blow things up." He set his glass down. "Then don't build your life somewhere they've got the key." That stuck. At home, I opened the filing cabinet in the spare room. Years of folders, receipts, things I'd kept because my dad taught me to. Braces paperwork, college deposits, car repairs. Then something newer. Transfers I didn't recognize at first. Small, regular. Linda moving money quietly into an account with Emily's name on it. Not illegal. Not huge, just hidden. I laughed once, short and surprised. It wasn't anger yet.
It was clarity. By the next morning, I knew two things. They'd already moved on, and everything they had was built on my signature.
The cruise line didn't ask questions. Reason for cancellation? The woman asked. I'm no longer a passenger, I said, in more ways than one. Then I called an attorney. You can sell, he said, after reviewing the deed. House is titled solely in your name. What about my wife? She lives there, he said. That's not the same thing. Silence again. Useful this time. I waited one full day before calling the realtor, not because I was unsure, but because I needed to hear my own thoughts without Linda's voice climbing over them. Karen Whitfield answered on the second ring. I'm thinking of selling, I said. She didn't ask why. Karen Whitfield walked through the house 2 days later. She moved carefully, professionally, like someone inspecting a place that still held echoes. Tapped walls, checked windows, made notes on a yellow pad. I kept my hands in my pockets the whole time, afraid that if I touched anything, I'd remember why I used to care. The house looked smaller than I remembered, not because it had changed, but because I had. Does your wife know? Karen asked, not looking at me, voice neutral. She's traveling, I said. I'll handle it. Karen nodded once. We can move fast, but if she contests it, it could get loud. I'm used to loud, I said. I'm done with noise. That night I started packing. Not everything, just what mattered. Old work shirts, photos my dad had taken before his hands started shaking, a box of tools that had followed me through every place I'd ever lived. My phone rang on the dresser. Linda. I didn't answer. It rang again, then again. The vibration walked the phone across the wood like it was trying to escape. A voicemail came through. Mark, stop this. You're embarrassing me. Rick's right here. He thinks you're overreacting. Rick. I deleted the message and turned the phone off. The offer came faster than I expected. A young couple, Ben and Alyssa Morales, stationed at Rock Island Arsenal. First baby on the way, VA loan approved. They needed to move before the end of the month. They're asking a little under, Karen said carefully. I thought about the dining table, the head chair, how I'd always slid it back in when things got tense. Tell them yes. Signing day was quiet, just me, the title agent, and the hum of fluorescent lights. My hand shook once on the last page. Then it didn't. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed back to life. Emily. Dad, Mark, please don't do anything drastic. I stared at it, then typed, I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. That night, I packed the truck. I left everything else exactly where it was. At dawn, I pulled out of the driveway. The house looked the same as always, solid, quiet, already belonging to someone else. They were somewhere on the river raising a glass. I was driving west, watching the sun come up, breathing again. They came back on a Tuesday. I know because Karen texted me at 3:18 p.m. They're there now. I was sitting in a diner just outside Muscatine, vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like it had once thought about being coffee. I didn't respond right away. I folded my hands and stared at the napkin dispenser like it might explain something. Then the call started. Linda first. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, Emily. I didn't answer that either. Karen filled in the rest later, piece by piece, her voice calm in that realtor way that makes disaster sound like weather. Linda pulled into the driveway laughing, suitcase still in the trunk, Emily behind her, sunglasses on, phone in hand. At first, they thought it was funny. Different car, lawn trimmed differently, new planter by the door. Then, Linda tried the key. She rattled the knob hard, like the lock might apologize and open out of embarrassment. It didn't. She stepped back and stared at the house like it had personally betrayed her, called my name. Then she started dialing. Inside, Ben Morales opened the door halfway, chain still on, polite, apologetic. Told her they'd just moved in. Linda laughed,
a sharp, broken sound, and told him he was standing in her house. Alyssa came up behind him, one hand on her stomach. Emily stood frozen on the walkway, phone down now, face pale. The police came. Paperwork was shown, names read, dates checked. The older officer asked one question. "Ma'am, whose name is on the deed?" That pause, that's when it landed. Linda called me again. I answered on the fourth ring. "What did you do?" she demanded. "I sold the house." "You can't do that." "It was my house," I said. "You just lived in it." Rick got on the phone, angry, righteous. Emily took it back. "I didn't think you'd really do it," she said. "I didn't think you meant what you said," I replied. Silence. "I raised you," I said finally. "I didn't rent space in your life." The call ended. The complaint came a week later. Court smelled like old books and disinfectant. Linda arrived late. Rick too comfortable. Emily quiet. I laid out the documents. Deed, mortgage, cruise payments, years of receipts. The mediator read slowly. "Legally," she said, "Mr. Halverson acted within his rights." Linda slumped. Rick leaned back. Emily looked up for the first time with recognition. No gavel, no applause, just truth. The rental near the river was small, one bedroom, a table just big enough for two. I sat by the Mississippi most mornings with a thermos, watching the water slide around exposed rocks. Silence weighs less than pretending. Emily texted later, "Can we talk sometime?" We met, neutral ground, honest words, no rewrites. It wasn't a happy ending. It was an honest one. If you've ever been quietly erased, if you've ever paid the cost while someone else enjoyed the benefits, remember this: love without respect is just labor. If this story hit home, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what's the quietest revenge you've ever seen?